It's running.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Martha.
Hi, Martha, and I'm so glad that you people are here today. We've had a lot of confusion this afternoon getting things ready, and maybe it was just supposed to be the people here today. You know how that works out.
Yes.
The right people in the right place at the right time. So we're just glad it's you today, and that we're going to have a wonderful afternoon with Jesus. So he's waiting to come in, and I just want to wish everybody a merry holiday, a happy Christmas, and all those good things that are waiting for you under the Christmas tree. So have a merry time, and here he is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.
Greetings, I am Jesus.
Greetings.
Welcome, Jesus.
I am so pleased to be here this afternoon. This has been an interesting time getting things ready and getting people together so that it all worked out and getting really well enough to do this. So happy afternoon, and let's enjoy the results of everything coming together finally. I have some tidings of great joy today that I have come and wanted to share for some time, but it actually has happened at this point. Some of the times there have not been channelings, we've been waiting for this opportunity of today. This is a momentous time in your history. This is the time I came and proclaimed in the Bible. And so you see, this is a wonderful experience of thousands and thousands of years finally coming together, that my message of love is finally taking place. Because last Friday, I believe, 12/12 on your calendar, the Christ consciousness came into earth. What a day to rejoice, and what a day to celebrate, that all your hard work of moving your energy and shifting and coming into that which is real, the reality of God, is going to be manifesting more and more on planet Earth, and releasing all that which is not of God. You see, the third dimension is on its way out, completely to be dissolved in the love of our Maker and Creator. And that is the big glad tiding of the day, that I want you to know that this is a momentous time in history. People have talked about peace on earth, and we'll tell them a little bit more about what that means in a little bit. But I would like to also share that the Bible is very symbolic about what it was expressing to you, and sometimes it was not always interpreted as it was intended, and sometimes it was actually misinterpreted or changed. So I would like to add a few words about some of the events in my life that were described in the Bible. What was the significance of the energy behind the story. You see, appearances can be deceiving, and some people do not look beyond the word for the spirit of the story, the essence of what is being told. Today you are receiving eyes to see and ears to hear beyond appearances. When it said that I was born in a manger, that was symbolic. You see, if you're born with an ego, that is the lowest form of consciousness, which would be a manger. There was no room at the inn meant that there was no room for Christ consciousness, because your focus was so intent on survival in your ego, there was no room for a higher consciousness. So you see, you have spent many lifetimes changing this manger birth, with the ego running your show and influencing you out of survival from fear and karma. Gradually, over many, many lifetimes that you people have had, you have gradually changed from the fear-based life of the ego, which some people call edging God out, gradually raising your consciousness. As you read in Marilyn's recent book, there are some charts in there of raising your consciousness. You have come from the lowest consciousness into today. The planet Earth has the energy of the Christ consciousness, and you can align your energy at this time in history with the Christ consciousness. That's why this is such a momental time and so important that you can bring your consciousness out of the manger and let it move higher and higher, evolving into that higher consciousness, which is called often the Christ consciousness, God consciousness, some call it the Buddha consciousness. Whatever term works for you is just fine, because it's all about energy and not the label. As I progressed in my life to resist and to actually release those ego influences, I did spend time in the desert, and I was tempted. And Satan was described in the Bible as a personage. However, it was the energy of the ego tempting me from the fear and the karmic residues I still needed to release from my past lives. And each time I chose God and God consciousness and resisted the temptation of my lower consciousness, the ego-driven consciousness I was born with, that you were born with. However, we all were also born with the Christ's divine spark. And it has been asleep. And through the changing of the energies, the divine consciousness inside has been awakening until this period in time. Enough dark, dense energy of the third dimension has dispelled. Critical mass has been attained. The earth is moving forward in more and more Christ consciousness. And as you move your lives more and more into that Christ consciousness, which is important to release the old and bring in the love that is the reality of God, to replace that space that is left, you will eventually come to a time in your life, if you haven't already, where you will find a crucifixion in your own experience. The crucifixion was not depicted quite as it was meant to be implied. So I would like to explain the crucifixion was crucifying my ego so that I would be free of that influence to move into the Christ consciousness, which is depicted in Easter. Free from the old and moving into the new dimension, fifth dimension of heaven on earth, where there is no darkness, no fearful karmic energy to influence and lead you astray, because that will be dissipated. That is what's meant by Satan being bound. The light of God heals everything, and it is dispelling your karma right now. This loving energy of the Christ consciousness is dispelling the remnants of your ego, which you still need to maybe address in some form and release if necessary to move on into the higher Christ consciousness so that you're aligned with the planet's consciousness. You want to join the Christ consciousness, moving your consciousness higher and higher as it evolves into the different levels of feelings. So you see, the crucifixion was the crucifixion not really of a person. I had moved emotionally out of third dimension at that point of the crucifixion. I was in grace and felt no harm on the cross. But I did take 3 days for my spiritual consciousness of the Christ consciousness to come into the forefront as I rose from the dead, the death of the ego, and then was able to abide in my Christ consciousness, which you are in the way of doing at this point in time, and you are being supported by the planet Earth to do this. This is a very big undertaking. We tried to accomplish this back in the days of Atlantis. Most of you know of the devastation that that ended up in because of the derailment, you might call it. But we finally have succeeded. It is A-OK and all points forward at this point for the planet to continue ascending into that heaven on earth that you have read about, the 1,000 years of peace, which actually will be more than 1,000 years, but the Bible puts things in terms that are easy for people of those days and those times when it was written to understand. So that's why so much of the Bible is really spiritual growth behind the words, not the dots and the T's being crossed. It is not the word in the Bible that is as important as the energy it's bringing forth. You might say it's the spirit behind the words is what the message was all about. And many people got caught up in the actual words and forgot to look beyond the words, because beyond the words and thoughts is the grace of God. It is not in your thinking. It is in your heart. It is an experience. Christ consciousness is an experience. And in experiencing that particular level of consciousness, you will no longer have to deal with the trauma and drama of earth and the turmoil, crisis, and chaos that you hear on the news every night. That will start to dispel. Gradually you are going to hear more of the changes that will be occurring because of the love coming in and replacing that turmoil, the disagreements, the wars, the parts that are not fair and honest, those things that have been in, where people have been tortured, all those things are going to be coming in slightly but gradually into a new understanding where that will no longer be possible. You see, you are leaving your tomb of humanhood, moving into your spirit. You are the Spirit of God in a form. So many of you have focused on the form to the point that you have given it so much power that you get sick, that you call things sin, that you call things in a way that are very judgmental and are not even there, disease, various medical situations. All of these are part of third dimension illusion, and as you change your focus into reality, only that which is of God is good and is real. The great reality is deep within you. Every time something comes up, to turn within for your answers. That's where you'll find your healing. It's not with those things outside of you. Those worked very well while you were in survival, while you were in third dimension with an ego giving you information which was not always accurate because it was very much distorted by the dark side. So you lived in ignorance is what happened. And that ignorance is going to gradually, perpetually dissolve in the love of God. And only your spiritual eyes will see. Only your spiritual ears will hear. And that old third dimension will disappear. There was a book written called Disappearance of the Universe, and that's what he was describing, is you will become in the world, but not of it. You see, if you are living on earth, you will see the surroundings around you differently than you did before. You will see only the good in people. You will see only through the eyes of God. Only the good things that will come together, and know that you are taken care of through the grace of God. God's grace is sufficient. You will move and be in your spirit essence. You will move out of being a human being having a spiritual experience into a spiritual being releasing your human experience, releasing the fears, the karmic and turmoil and other problems of this third dimensional world. You will change your glasses. You've had them on backwards, and now you will be able to see the truth, that all there is God, all there is love. Anything that is not positive is an illusion, and not to focus on it anymore, because if you focus on it, it grows, and if you focus on God, your God consciousness will grow. That is the choice. That has always been your free will to choose God or not. But now the planet supports this. So as you're choosing a higher consciousness, your Christ consciousness, that divine spark that was born with you on your Christmas, your day of birth, that divine spark is awakening. And your divinity is going to be shining. And what a beautiful time it will be with all the souls on earth being able to see each other through the eyes of God, bringing harmony, bringing peace and understanding, cooperation, and joy. I would like to say that the attributes of God are joy. As you are feeling more and more joy in your life, it's really not a feeling, it's a state of existence. You are bringing a new consciousness upon which you will base your life. It will be always a choice to bring out the best loving solution. And you will, because of your Christ consciousness, have your challenges, but that doesn't mean they will be as disastrous from years past, from making wrong choices, because the planet is not in that lower depth of despair and anguish like it has been for eons. The energy is higher, so your challenges, may I surprise you by saying, will not be as difficult. Isn't that a joy to hear? Knowing when you're in joy, you're in the presence of God. Another attribute that you will become a part of in this new consciousness of your Christ consciousness will be oneness. And in this oneness, as you've risen your energy out of that tomb of humanhood into the Christ consciousness, you will see how easily you were deceived by feeling or being told you were separated from God. That was strictly a religious thing to distract you from the truth. Your oneness will come into plain understanding that your spirit, the spirit in every blade of grass, the spirit in every tree, every leaf, every mountain, every animal, and everything as you see around you has spirit. The Spirit of God is its essence. You see, everything is spirit. It was just manifested down into a physical form for you to benefit from what the needs would be in your position, in your situation of life. If you needed a car, it was manifested. If you needed a home, it was manifested. If you needed a partner, it was manifested for you from spirit. You have always been one with God. Your needs have always been taken with you and given you. It is only those that were not in a higher consciousness, thinking they had a lack, thinking they were limited, thinking they were ill, thinking they had scarcity, there wasn't enough, they weren't good enough. None of that was real. As you move into the Christ consciousness, it won't even be part of your memory at one point. You'll say, oh, that was really barbaric. I wasn't really happening. I see now it was just part of a story I went through because my energy needed to shift into this higher Christ consciousness, of which I have just deliberately continued on the spiritual path to find. And I am now arriving into this new place, which will be the oneness of God, no longer separated from God's Spirit, but one with all things in Spirit. And as you think about your needs, they will appear to you. So you see, even in the long run, down the path even further, there won't even be a need for money. You will just create from Spirit what you need yourself. You will be your co-creator. At the past, it has been created for you to be able to sustain in a third dimensional world. But now you will not need that. You will be able to find your own creations, make your own way and path of what fits you and only you in the truth of your oneness with God and all things that are around you. You will be one in spirit. And in doing this oneness, you will find the peace inside that passes all understanding. That peace is not of the world. It is not because the wars will stop and the trauma and drama of people's lives will cease to be so you feel peaceful in your family. The family war might have stopped. This peace is of God. This is a higher peace. This is an inner peace that you have as your birthright. It is not a peace because something around you is peaceful. This peace comes from within, and you pass it out to those around you, and it will bring peace to the earth. You are here to create peace on earth through your oneness with God in your joy. And in doing this and letting all this wonderful, loving Christ energy fill you, you will belong to God. You are God's child. You are of His loving spirit. You are a piece of God and will be able to manifest a life beyond your wildest imaginations in unconditional love, unselfish love, no strings attached, no expectations, only what is. If you look at what is, then you can choose in your old way to make it right or wrong, to make it a troublesome thing for you or a good thing for you. You don't need the troublesome things anymore. You don't need the things that cause difficulties for you anymore. So now when you see what is in front of you, you can just go forward and say, well, today this is what I need to take care of. It's going to be a good day. You get to release all the resistance you have been pushing through your life.